Donald Trump has to go. He really has to go. I have no problem saying that, in my opinion, Donald Trump is the worst president in modern American history. I've just watched a press conference, or part of the press conference on the White House lawn, which has kind of become a predictable aspect of this president. It's Trump versus the press. So Jim Acosta of CNN quoted Trump directly. These weren't inventions; these were direct quotes about Trump on, I believe it was March the 4th, saying that there's very few cases in the US, that it's a miracle, that things are great, it will go down. That's not verbatim from myself, but that was the gist of it, right? So he was putting out a very optimistic message. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with a leader trying to keep morale high and put out an optimistic message. But there is something wrong when you make factually incorrect statements and backtrack on them and try to silence journalists for doing their job. I think that's a damn disgrace. Um, and I know that there'll be Trump supporters who don't like Jim Acosta. It's not the first time he's had tensions with the president, more even than other journalists. But as far as I'm concerned, from what I see, Jim Acosta is simply doing his job. So Trump's response was, instead of asking such a snarky question, why don't you thank the virologists, the people on the front line? That is such a pathetic response, because it's not the job of a journalist to thank the medical personnel. And I'm sure Jim Acosta, like most Americans, would be grateful for the work that they're doing. But that is Trump's pathetic way of trying to deflect attention from himself, but not in a good way, not in a like, oh, look at how great these people are, but more like, just don't criticize me. This is the most thin-skinned, narcissistic, unstatesmanlike president, certainly in my lifetime. Um, and really, you have to go a very long way back to see anything like this. Why does this matter? It matters for a lot of reasons. It matters because the United States has now become uh, now has more cases than China. Report cases anyway. Data is always a bit fragile, but let's say at least among reported cases, over 150,000. To be fair, I think China's probably a lot more than what it claims, but the point is clearly the United States is in a very serious situation. Trump's attitude was, oh, I knew about the pandemic before anyone. He also quoted Seoul in his response to this about testing per capita. So apparently a million Americans have been tested, but per capita it's still under other countries, bearing in mind the United States is the third most populous country in the world. And Trump came out with a line about Seoul in South Korea. I'm not quite sure where he was going with that, but he falsely claimed that Seoul has 38 million people. It doesn't. The city proper is between 10 and 11 million, and even the metropolitan area, it is big. It's one of the biggest in the world, but it's about 25 million. Now, why does this matter? It matters because it just shows that Trump will say anything. He's just a compulsive liar. Um, and you might think it's a trivial thing, but it does matter in the middle of a crisis. New York City is really in a serious situation. Over 1,000 deaths from this thing, and Central Park has been turned into a kind of field hospital. Trump's leadership on this has been, in my opinion, appalling. And whilst I still blame the Chinese regime for their cover up, first and foremost, and I believe the world will need to hold them to account, um, I also am concerned about Trump's utter lack of leadership on this. Backtrap, his backtracking, his refusal to take responsibility for his own words, um, his attempts to intimidate and bully journalists simply for doing their job. Now, I'm not going to say the media has always been neutral when it comes to Trump. There has been times, CNN in particular has distorted things. They have. And they absolutely have a bias. Granted, I accept that. But I still think that Trump's attitude to the press He behaves like more like a tin pot tyrant than the supposed leader of the free world. He is incredibly thin-skinned. And to those who say, "Oh, it's all CNN's bias," well, look at the way Fox News treated Obama. But you didn't see Obama have the sort of tantrums that Trump has. Every time Fox News laid into Obama by X, Y, and Z, you didn't see Obama get into these angry tantrums with the press. So there is a huge difference. You didn't see Bush get into angry tantrums with the press, and he got a pretty rough time from the left wing media as well. But he didn't have the same tantrums. Bush recognized that with his job came criticism. Clinton recognized that. Obama recognized that. Bush Sr. recognized that. Reagan recognized it. And there would have been times they all would have had tetchy moments. I'm not going to say they were always calm, but with Trump, it is every single time. I mean, I honestly think Trump's a wannabe dictator. So, whilst I absolutely hold the Chinese regime responsible, I think Dan Wilton was right on talk radio to say that the Chinese government actually has blood on its hands for its cover up and for its failure to close down these disgusting wet markets. I also think Trump's lack of leadership is very concerning. So, for that reason, I really hope the Democrats can beat him this year. It's not that I think Joe Biden is an exceptional leader. I've got some concerns about Biden. I think sometimes his age shows, and that is concerning. But already Biden has shown more statesmanship than Trump has by not making it about himself, by by promoting common sense approaches, social distancing, washing your hands, all this sort of stuff. I mean, it's routine, practical stuff. But if you look at Trump's record in this, what Dan Acosta was saying, Jim Acosta, excuse me, was simply quoting what Trump himself was saying. So how he can berate Acosta for his snarky question, Trump needs to get some tough skin and actually, I mean, I just can't believe the ego of this guy. He knows soul better than anyone else, apparently. And what I do find concerning is I know that he has a very strong base and he might well get re-elected. And that is just hard to fathom. How a president with this track record, I mean, the only thing Trump had going for him was a strong economy, and it looks like we're heading towards a global recession. So I am angry with the Chinese government, but they are what they are. Donald Trump, uh, this really matters because we could be seeing actually the transition from the United States to China as the world's leading power, and in the near future, we could see China getting into that number one slot. I'm not just talking economically, but importantly, they could actually start getting enough influence at the World Health Organization and other such bodies to actually supersede the United States. That's very concerning. And I fully agree that all these organizations need major reforms. But on Trump's watch, this has happened. China has got more and more and more assertive, and the trade war is one thing, but Trump's volatile relationship with Western institutions, his volatile relationship with Western allies, I think it has emboldened China and Russia, but particularly China, and that is deeply concerning. Trump constantly degrades journalists. He constantly degrades NATO and other Western organizations. It's very, very concerning. I'm not going to say absolutely everything he's done is bad. That's not my position. And I'm not one of these people that's just hating Trump for the sake of it. But I sincerely believe that his track record shows this has been su- this president has been what really works me up actually is when his supporters say he was draining the swamp. What's he done to drain the swamp? He hasn't actually stuck to his word. I mean, Hillary hasn't went on trial. So if you voted for Trump because you hated Hillary Clinton, well, she hasn't went on trial anyway. So he hasn't kept those promises. Not that I think there's much validity in that, but I mean, he's a carnival barker. He's not a president. He is a president in name and, de facto, but he has zero statesmanship. So I have to say, for the most part, and I'm not a New Yorker, it's maybe not for me to say what it's like on the ground, but I've been quite impressed by Governor Cuomo. He's come across as collected, clear. Um, that's my impression anyway. I don't know what New Yorkers think of Cuomo, but that's my impression. It's just staggering that Trump still talks like this, and just in the middle of a crisis as well. And a historical footnote: in the middle of the Great Depression, Herbert Hoover was defeated. So it tends to be a track record that during national crises, incumbent presidents get defeated. With Bush Jr., it was different because September 11th happened in the beginning of his term. And he got a lot of heat over that famous incident where he was reading a book in the Florida kindergarten whilst the attacks were going on. But I always felt that was a bit blown out of proportion because, A, he was with children. So, it's not like he could have responded in a certain way in that context. Secondly, this was with the first report of the plane hitting the tower. It wasn't. Basically, I think that was totally taken out of context, and I think it was a bit unfair how Bush was portrayed over that. I don't think it's a case that he just sat by and done nothing. I think that's deeply unfair. And Bush deserves plenty of criticism, but I think that criticism was unfair. Trump, on the other hand, his tantrums against the press are what they are. No president, like I say, in my lifetime has responded that way, and is very, very telling.